The average person, look, you want to go to work, do your job, let us fight for you. Let us take on the grievances at work. Don't bring them home. That's the beauty of a union.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
We're going to wrap up today by taking a look at Teamsters President Sean O'Brien. I wish that we had it set up where the Zoom guest could hear the clips, because he said something about how people don't know what a union is, or they think that it's just an insurance thing. And oh boy golly, do I have a clip for you from Sean O'Brien, president of the Teamsters International Union. And I'll do a little bit of throat clearing. Obviously, Sean O'Brien, the leadership of Sean O'Brien and his group at the Teamsters has been good in many ways for the Teamsters Union. They got the ALU to affiliate, and since the ALU's affiliation, organizing at Amazon for the first time has really taken off in a real way nationwide. There have now been multiple of those delivery service providers, the kind of contract companies that Amazon uses. There have been multiple of those to go union in the last month or so, and the ALU has had new elections, and it seems like the new leadership is getting serious about organizing for a contract. And so there are, and they've organized 50,000 workers since Sean O'Brien became president of the Teamsters. Okay, so look, really, really good stuff, and probably organizing new members, getting new workplaces organized is one of the most important things that you can do as a union. And so even with my political and even, union disagreements with Sean O'Brien aside, I know that John Palmer is running against Sean O'Brien. And I know that John Palmer and I agree much more. We're much more closely aligned, I believe, on politics. But I would have to think really seriously about if I was a Teamster, who I would vote for in the election, because of that Sean O'Brien's been doing some good things for the Teamsters. And so all of that throat clearing aside, fortunately, I don't have to really make that decision. That's going to be up to the Teamsters. Sean O'Brien was on Theo Von's podcast recently. Theo Von is kind of in the Joe Rogan, dude bro podcast sphere. He for sure kind of seems and has a culturally conservative affect. He has some, kind of opinions on immigration and other things that I would disagree with. But also he's a super kind of apolitical affect, right? And so just kind of a dude bro, right? And lots of people have been on his podcast. Bernie Sanders, I think, was Donald Trump on Theo Von's podcast? I can't remember, but he's had a lot of people on his podcast. I really enjoyed Bernie Sanders on Theo Von's podcast. It was pretty cool. And it was kind of that thing where you get somebody on Joe Rogan who's a left-winger, and Joe Rogan sounds like a left-winger, and you get a right-winger on Joe Rogan, and then Joe Rogan sounds like a right-winger. It was kind of that deal. Theo Von sounded just straight up like a socialist while he was talking to Bernie Sanders. And then while he's talking to other people, he sounds like kind of a little bit of a fascist. So, but I enjoy listening to Theo Von occasionally when he gets a good guest. But so he had Sean O'Brien on, and he asked Sean O'Brien what a union is. Let's play this first clip.
And a union is what?
A union is, we represent working people.
Okay.
We make certain, we collectively bargain for our members. We make certain that we protect them in the workplace, process all their grievances, but more importantly, organize workers throughout the country that want to be unionized. And we've been very successful doing that. And we just want to represent working people. 1.3 million right now. Hopefully we'll be 2 million in the near future.
Amen.
So, longtime listeners of the show are going to know, immediately, I think, what my issue there is. What is a union? Theo Von asks. Sean O'Brien says, we, the union, represent workers, this other third group that is not we, right? We, the union, organize workers, this third different set of people that is not the union. We file grievances for the workers, this other third kind of out there group that's not the union. And that is just fundamentally a misunderstanding or, the wrong idea of unionism. But it was soft enough there. It was a soft enough version of this third partying of the union, which, third partying the union, any organizer training classes, I would be willing to bet a significant amount of money that if you go to a Teamsters organizer training as a Teamster, this is going to be one of the first things that you learn about that the bosses will do is they will say the union is a third party. And here is Sean O'Brien, international president of the Teamsters, saying what the bosses say about unions and about workers, that we're different groups, not the same. But it was soft enough there that I didn't know if I was going to make a segment about it. It wasn't super egregious, and he didn't spend a long time kind of talking about it. So I was kind of going back and forth, and I didn't know if I was going to do it. But then when I finished I listened to the whole, it's 2 hours. It was a long time. But I listened to it on 2 times speed, but nevertheless, it was still a long time. And they hit on this topic kind of again. And this second version of this was so much more egregious that I almost felt compelled to talk about it, that I have to talk about it, because millions of people are going to see, I think it's millions, let me look it up. A lot of people are going to see this from Sean O'Brien on Theo Vaughn's podcast. I don't know exactly how many it is. I think it's millions. Let's see. Theo Vaughn. Let's look it up on YouTube. It's about 500,000 views on YouTube alone. And so you've obviously also got the audio platform. So it's a lot of people, maybe a million, are going to hear Sean O'Brien, president of the Teamsters, president of one of the largest unions in the country, third partying the union. But the second version, the second time he does it, is so much more egregious. I felt like I had to talk about it. Let's play this.
And it starts with the individual people, and sometimes the individual people can't do it by themselves anymore because they don't have the lawyers to back them up. They don't have the voice they need. So the individual people have to get together and they have to unionize. Yep. And that's where you guys come in.
Yeah, you can't survive as an American worker not represented now that the deck is stacked against you, and the average person, look, you want to go to work, do your job, let us fight for you. Let us take on the grievances at work. Don't bring them home. That's the beauty of a union. You don't have to, you have the backing of a union. You don't have to fight with your employer. Make a call and say, hey, to your business agent, you work for me. This is my issue. This is my grievance. I have faith you're going to fix it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. You don't have to take on all that stress.
Wow. Let us, the union, fight for you, the worker. Don't bring the stress home. That's the beauty of the union. You can call your business agent and he will resolve the problem for you. I mean, that is just totally the wrong idea of unionism. That is not, that's crazy. That's crazy. You cannot build a powerful fighting union by making people believe that they just sign a card and then they can call their business agent and the business agent will fix all of their problems. The business agent is only as powerful as the members. If the members are not activated, then the business agent does not have that legitimacy and that backing, and the boss is not going to fear him or her, right? I mean, that's just so, I almost don't have anything else to say about it because it's just so crazy to me that this is the selling pitch. This is his elevator pitch for unionism. You don't have to fight. You don't have to fight. That's why you should join a union, so you don't have to fight. That's crazy. I don't know what else. I'm just at a loss for words. I don't know. Adam, what do you think? Help me out here. What's going on?
Well, I think what you said earlier is we are trained to anticipate third-party language from the boss, and we get that all the time from industry, from management. But, oftentimes people in our labor movement do the same kind of thing. They third-party the union. And we have to acknowledge that unions are both like institutions that exist, right, with their own leadership and structures and budgets and all that good stuff. But, at their core, unions are a tool in our toolbox. It is the tool and the method in which we do fight, in which we as working people are able to fight. It's the tool that gives us the ability to fight back. So yeah, it is a little strange. It's a little strange. I don't like telling members, call us, we'll handle it for you. I worked for an organization for years where they had that sort of philosophy, and most members treated it like insurance. It was something you paid for. You paid a bill for it every month, and you called if there was an emergency. And if there was an emergency, you call and you expect them to just kind of handle it for you. That's not the same as being part of a working class movement that is organizing and building power, both in the workplace and in the broader community. So, I do think that it's not helpful to have that kind of framing. I think we have to be honest with folks that you do have to fight. Like, that's how we will win. People have to be engaged. People have to stand up and do something. Now, that's not to say that you're going to fight alone. That is the point with the union. You're not fighting alone. You're fighting as part of a movement and part of a collective. And I think that's the lesson that I really want folks to take away. It's about that power that we have when we come together. So it's not an insurance. It's not an insurance plan. Yes, those sorts of protections, like, when you have an emergency and you have to call your union to file a grievance, or because you're being terminated, or, you need a lawyer, or whatever the situation may be, like, obviously that's a very important part of what unions do. And it's an important part of why you pay dues. And when those situations happen, you damn well hope that the union comes through for you, right? But ideally, it's a situation where you aren't really separated from the union. And it's not like an outside entity that you're calling. Like, you see yourself as part of that organization. You are part of the organization. And so, yeah, it's a frustrating thing, and it's something we have to deal with. And it does harken back to the comments from our guest earlier about organizing the organized, because I do think he hit on something, which is a lot of people who are in unions already do not have some sort of really militant class consciousness, so to speak. They may not even have like the trade union consciousness in their workplace, frankly. And so that's something that we have to work on. We do have to educate our members to know what it means to be in a union, both, the responsibility and also, the role that each person plays in that, because it takes everyone working together to make it effective and to make it strong. I think there are real limits to what you can accomplish if you treat yourself like an insurance agency.
Right.
Because ultimately the power dynamics are not in our favor. We don't own the companies, nor do we own the politicians. So, the dynamics are not in our favor. So he is right that the deck is stacked against the workers. I agree with that, but yeah, I don't agree with the framing as if it is someone else that you call to handle your problems. No, we have to work together to fix them together.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
Yes, and we had somebody in the chat say, I think you may be reading more into that, say most unions I've dealt with, including the IA, this is an IATSE member, unions around here want the members to lean on the business rep so that there won't be retaliations. And look, there are reasons to start with the business representative, but it's the problem that we have is not that the first time there's an issue, you call the business agent and you want to file a grievance. The problem is the idea that the union as an institution is separate from you and it fights for you, right? And fortunately, I do think, like I said, and you know, kind of calling back to what I was saying before, it does not seem like this new organizing, or at least some of it, you know, like at Amazon in particular, it does not seem like this new organizing is reflective of this attitude, because at multiple of these Amazon delivery contractors, we're seeing marches on the boss. We're seeing the people that are being organized fighting together. And that's the beauty of the union, is that you have to fight, but you do not have to fight alone. You fight together. That's the beauty of the union. And you're fighting together when you're in a unionized environment with a contract. It might be funneled through your business agent filing a grievance or something, but ultimately it comes back to your willingness to fight together and your ability to fight together. And that's the issue, is kind of like, and I guess, and I understand how it could come across as perhaps a like a nitpicky thing, but it's really important for people ideologically, I think, to believe that they are the union, and when the business agent fights for them, that is the union fighting for them. That is them fighting for themselves, right? I think that's a really important distinction, that it is harmful to have somebody like a Sean O'Brien muddying the waters on this idea of, you know, the difference or lack thereof of the idea that the union and the workers are two separate parties. I think there's some damage there that's being done when the union is also part of the ones that are third partying the union. Hypertech says the whole point of unions is to fight, but we work together. Exactly right.
Well, and I was going to also say that unions do muddy the waters on this subject sometimes when it comes to class as well. You know, how frequently we see unions talk about fighting for the middle class, you know, protecting the middle class, you know, winning back the middle class, all this and that. I mean, by definition, union members are working class, right? We are not in the middle class, right? We are not small business owners. We're not lawyers and doctors who run our own firms. We're not stock investors. We don't have capital. We work for people with capital, and we are working class. And so I get very frustrated when our unions engage in that sort of mystification. Yes, unions have historically afforded many of its members middle-class style lifestyles, like middle-class lifestyles, middle-class income, perhaps. But definitionally, we're working class. You know, don't get that twisted. And I don't think that's helpful, especially in America where, you know, 80% of the country seems to think they're middle class. Right. And that just doesn't add up. So, you know, that's something that I notice a lot that bothers me. It's semi-related there.
Yeah, and it's also worth noting that Theo Vaughn, on his clips, the title of each of the clips with Sean O'Brien begins with Teamsters Boss. Teamsters Boss, explain why the longshoremen are on strike.
Well, that's
Teamsters
another
Boss.
one. That's another one.
But does Sean O'Brien care about that? Like, does he like being called the Teamster? You know, like, I don't know. It's just frustrating to me. And then also, you know, as another quick aside, I cannot stand that shirt that he's going around wearing. Teamsters versus everybody. That is so bad ideologically. That is the kind of idea that you are pushing into your members, that it's our union versus everybody, rather than the working class versus the bosses, rather than the unions versus the bosses. It's the Teamsters versus everybody. That does bother me. like really grinds my gears. And yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's helpful. Like, it's, it's fine if it's like a football team, right? That's cool, whatever. But
Right.
yeah,
It's not a football team.
it's not a football team,
No.
right? So like, I don't know. I'm thinking as a labor council, we want to get the Teamsters engaged, but are y'all versus us too? Like,
Right.
no, just think through it. It doesn't make sense, and I don't particularly care for it either. So, just little things like that. I think, maybe it's nitpicky, maybe it's reading too much into framing, but that stuff does make an impact on folks, whether we realize it or not. It may not be, very conscious, but I think it can make an impact.
Hypertext asks, and this is a good opportunity to talk about this topic. I mean, wasn't the middle class basically formed because of unions? And if we didn't have them, we wouldn't have had a middle class at all. And, there's a way in which that is true, right? There is a way in which that makes true, that makes sense, that if you conceptualize the middle class as a lifestyle and a level of income and a level of consumption and all of that, then yes, you can say that. But I would argue that the middle class was more of a liberal invention to separate tiers of workers from one another to make us that either was done purposely or had the effect of making higher paid workers think of themselves as in a different class than lower paid workers, and makes solidarity kind of that much more difficult. And that analytically, I come from a school of thought that says that class is your relationship to the means of production. And so if you work for a wage and you are not a manager, then you are working class, at least in that aspects of your life. And there are lots of complications, and you can be working class and then rent out a second home. And in your position as a worker at your job, you are working class, but in your position as a landlord, you're kind of petit bourgeois, right? But I think that those are the important distinctions, and that middle class is kind of a made up mumbo jumbo, meaningless kind of thing. But I don't know. Adam is a lot more smarter than me on that. So
No,
I can say it better than I can.
I agree. I think many people conceive of middle class in the way you described it, as a level of consumption and lifestyle and income and culture even, perhaps. And that's strongly correlated with education. But a machinist who makes $100,000 is still working class, even if they might actually make more than like the small business owner down the road. But the small business owner down the road, who, let's say hypothetically, also makes $100,000 a year, makes their money via profits, right, and employing others. And so there is a difference. So yeah, to me, it's your relationship to the means of production. It's your relationship to labor and to capital. How do you make money? And do you have enough money that your money makes its own money?
Right.
That is a clear distinction. But I do think there is an American mythos around this middle class, and people have this concept of being able to buy a house with a white picket fence and 2 cars and a dog, and kind of have that lifestyle, maybe the occasional vacation or that sort of thing. And I would agree with the assessment that unions did provide a middle-class lifestyle for millions of workers for a very long time, and continue to do so, but obviously historically much more so. If you look from the 1930s through the 1960s into the early 70s, wages and productivity tracked pretty closely, right? As workers became more productive and the economy grew, workers took a pretty good share of that income thanks to unions. Rich people were still rich. They continued to get rich, but inequality in terms of income and wealth was much, much lower. during this time from the 30s to the 60s, thanks to the union movement. But what we've seen in the last 50 years is the skyrocketing of inequality of wealth and income, because more and more of those gains have been concentrated into a tiny number of hands at the top, right? So the 1%, or even the 1% of the 1%, have seen their wealth and income grow tremendously over the past 50 years, whereas working people's wages have been more or less stagnant, on the big trajectory here. And that is directly correlated to the decline in union power. We have had less power to retain the value of the labor, retain the value that our labor produces. Unions help us do that. So that's some of the thoughts I have on this. I think, if you want to get technical, I would say middle-class folks are typically like small business owners, people in management, people who may still actually have to work, but also rely on other people's work and can direct other people's work. But yeah, most of us are working class. The vast majority of us, we don't give orders. We have to follow orders, and we don't own much. We just work for the people who do. And so I think those class distinctions are important. We have to understand those. And I don't like it when labor unions are not clear about that and contribute to this sort of mystification. It doesn't help our cause if people are more confused about this situation. People need to know where they stand in society. That's important because that helps us understand who we are, who we have common bonds with, and who our common enemies really are. And it's not, the folks who are poorer than us, because that's the other thing in class conversations in America, is that working people are also often pit against the most desperate and the poorest and marginalized folks in the community, right? So they want low and middle income workers to be pit against folks who are on welfare and disability and things like that, and of course immigrants. And it's just total nonsense. We as working class folks, if you don't own a bunch of capital, then you have more in common with each other. And I think that's the key lesson.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.